42.2. Our director, who's very well informed, perhaps better informed than we are, has told me that the judge who accepted Flynn's guilty plea has recused himself, which means that, you know, Flynn, I don't know, maybe have to make another deal or may be off the hook. And our director was saying, Dick Morris, who's a political observer, was speculating that if the Flynn prosecution falls apart because the judge claims that it stemmed from being inadequately informed about the basis of the FISA warrant, that everything that follows from via the principle of fruit of the poison tree. That is, the principle is that if the cops knock down your door and they find drugs and hookers and bazookas and whatever they find, if they didn't have a warrant for the original search, none of the stuff they found subsequent to the poison search, the poison tree that began the search, nothing, all that stuff gets thrown out. And if that speculation turns out to be true, which I doubt it is, it's bad news for my side. It substantiates your side, but it seems unlikely that that's the deal.
I have no idea what the Democrat obsession is with destroying Flynn. He's not a bad person. He was in combat. He fought for his country.
Well, he's the lock her up guy. And so some people...
What do you mean he's the lock her up guy? Everybody was saying
No,
that.
but he's the one who led the cheer at the Republican National Convention. So some people want to do the schadenfreude thing and see him locked up. Other people don't care. Other liberals say...
not move.
Okay, sorry.
You are an art model right now.
Yeah, I've been standing still for 12 hours, but...
Another thing that was said was that Strzok had initially said that Strzok or Stroke had said that...
Who's the FBI agent who had the emails with the other FBI agent he was having an affair with?
He originally stated that Flynn
Talk
was
loud,
not...
talk loud.
Well, I'll let Rick repeat it. Strzok had originally written in a memo that Flynn had not lied, but McCabe changed that. And that was not presented. Ooh. That was not presented to the defense.
Who said that? Who revealed this?
This was also revealed by Dick Morris.
Okay, that's a 302. These are 302
So repeat what I said
forms.
to
Okay, what it is it's highly unethical and illegal or something. It's highly bad. And now I'm talking a little inarticulately, but you're not, when an FBI agent is told to change a report, I think those are called 302 reports. So if you make a report after an interview and you're told to change it, or it gets changed, that's incredibly unethical, and that'll destroy a whole case.
So anyway, it's going to be a busy week is the deal.
Well, I mean, the thing is that I've always maintained that this poor Flynn was destroyed because the Democrats have these prosecutors that want to get anybody they can. They got him on a procedural thing where they mixed him up. He had said something, and they knew, probably from surveillance, that he was saying something that wasn't quite right, possibly because he forgot or was just mixed up. They interviewed him for many hours, and they didn't tell him what kind of danger he was in. The FBI called him the first week and said, "We'd like to come talk to you. Do you mind?" and he didn't know that his life was at stake, or he could have had a lawyer there with him. But they caught him in a slip-up, and they also went after his son. And it's going to turn out, I hope, that this is fruit of the poisonous tree, and that they're going to have to let him off. What they did with him is the same thing they're doing with Manafort, and that is they've got the whole weight of the government suing and fighting the Manafort and Flynn's family. And what happened is Flynn ran out of money. And Manafort just said, I'm going to fight to the bitter end. He just announced that.
Right. So I mean,
So
between the two of them, between Flynn and Manafort, Manafort's certainly the dirtier guy.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, you just look at everything about Manafort. They've shown the documents. Manafort was, I mean, Flynn was a general. Flynn, by his very nature, was less. He did some sleazy stuff, as far as I know, with the Turkey stuff, and I don't think he's an angel. But Manafort is super sleazy with the money laundering and for years, and $30 million here and $74 million from Ukraine there, and just. But in any case, I want to talk about fruit of the poison tree, because just an interesting thing happened. I don't know if we even have to fight about it. It was just crazy to watch. Last weekend, I think, Twitter purged Russian bot accounts. They just got rid of them. If they had an algorithm that was able to find bots, and conservatives on Twitter, some of them lost 5,000 followers because the followers were fake accounts, Russian accounts that were trying to pass as Americans. And then a day or two after that, there was a big discussion about one of these issues of prosecution. And on the timeline, on the thread where people respond to a story, there were all these tweets about fruit of the poisonous tree. And all these tweets with these phrases were from brand new baby Russian bots. These were bots that were like 2 days old. They had 30 tweets. They had 3 followers, and they had highly suspicious names like Joe Barcelona and Mark 1310292. And they're repeating all these conservative talking points kind of reflexively. And then other people are jumping in saying, how's the weather in St. Petersburg, comrade? Because St. Petersburg is where a lot of the bot manufacture goes on. And it was just really weird to see it happening in real time.
Well, I don't want to repeat myself from last week, so I'm going to avoid even a good argument that I could win, because I don't want to bore people. But what I believe is that the Russians' goal is to create civil war in the U.S. And that's always been their goal for 70 years, since Stalin. And it's actually a tactic that went back to the Assyrians. The Assyrians were the first people that would try to start a civil war in the country that they were about to invade. And it works pretty well for the Russians. I do not want to discuss the Vietnam War, but I believe it was the Russians that demoralized us and got us to lose the Vietnam War when we could have won it.
Yeah, I don't want to fight about it either, even though I disagree with you. And I agree with you halfway here.
Wait, you didn't let me finish my point.
Okay.
But my point is that even if it can be found that the Russians are repeating conservative talking points, it has been shown that they also they do things that are pro-conservative and anti-conservative. They've tried to organize pro-Trump events and anti-Trump events, and especially after the election, because they enjoy having us at each other's throats.
So I'll agree with you about that. And it's been substantiated that the Russians are trying to exacerbate American political polarization and our national pissiness. They're trying to get us pissed off at each other. So they will jump in on both sides of an issue. The place where we disagree is whether they supported Trump or not. Correct. And we don't have to fight about that, because we've already fought.
We did fight about that.
Yeah.
But it's working. And my belief is that Democrats, Republicans think Democrats are ill-informed. Democrats think Republicans are evil. And I know that because in my own personal life, I've lost good friends because they found out I voted for Trump. And it would never occur to me to stop talking to Rick or somebody because he voted for Hillary. I think the Democrats are self-delusional because they think they're full of compassion. It's true, they're full of compassion for Islam, for North Korea, but the one thing that they have no compassion for is conservative Americans.
I'm not going to argue about this. I will say, if you want to see all these things that we're talking about play out, start going on Twitter, or I guess you can get the same kind of, you get the same flavor off of Facebook. I think it happens faster on, but I think it happens probably faster in more easily digested chunks on Twitter, where you can watch all these skirmishes play out, which leads to so much stuff happens now politically every day that it's hard to keep track of all of it. Our director just told us like 7 or 8 stories that we were only half aware of. And you had something to say about the pace at which everything is just happening, or did you just say it?
Well, I think that what I have found is that when I research what's going on, I try to read both sides, I find that the Democrat media is lying, and that the Democrat Party is lying, and they can't win by telling the truth. They obscure the facts whenever possible because their goal is power. They want to get control. They don't care. I don't think they care about what's best for the country, because if they did, they wouldn't be bringing in millions of illegals to take the jobs of American blue-collar people.
I'm not going to argue, but we've had that argument before, but I will say that I think that the mainstream media that you call the Democrat media,
correct,
it has a lot of terrible habits, but I don't think lying is one of them. I think the Republican media tends to cherry pick stuff, but I think, and I will say that, like, frickin' the election and all the money and all the attention that went to the media kind of reinforced some terrible frickin' habits, like putting clocks up on the screen, like 1 hour 28 minutes to this, and what to elect. It used to be 1 hour 28 minutes till polls close on the East Coast, or till election results come in, and now it might be 1 hour 28 minutes till the premiere of the Van Jones show, as long as you can put a clock up, which that's an unhelpful. That has nothing to do with the news function.
Well, I have a good theory, which I'm not the only one that thinks this. but it bears repeating because others have said it. My theory is that the reason Trump is president is because of the Democrat media. I think they did exactly what every political party always tries to do. The first time I heard about this was Nixon, and I think I mentioned this before. You'll pardon me if I'm repeating myself, but Nixon tried to get the weakest candidate of the Democrats to get the nomination, and he picked McGovern, and he slaughtered McGovern in the biggest landslide in history at the time, and he knew he would, and he had a lot of dirty tricks to help the McGovern campaign and hurt the other candidates. So my theory is that the Democrat media looked around and they said, well, we've got a lot of Republicans running, but who's going to be the easiest one to beat? It'll be this buffoon, Trump. So I think they pushed Trump wherever they could. They gave him the microphone every time he opened his mouth. And then he got the nomination. And unfortunately for the Democrats, their worst nightmare occurred. And he ended up winning. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted to fix up Hillary with the easiest one to beat.
Well, there's a more innocent explanation. I mean,
well,
Trump
he also got viewership.
Yeah, because you could count on him to say or do something that was much more outrageous than any of the other Republican candidates.
Yeah, but in a way that's. I also think that's not that innocent of a thing to do. If you hate America that much that you will deliberately promote a buffoon, that's not innocent either. That's almost as bad.
Yeah, I'll semi-agree with you on this whole deal.
That you'll deliberately promote a guy you believe to be a buffoon. Well, and during the election, Trump did act like a buffoon quite a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, even in individual people, it's hard to probably have an accounting of how much is hoping that Hillary gets elected and how much is hoping you get good ratings.
No, I disagree because it is. Let me put it to you this way: every single election, every single presidential election, in my opinion, if the truth was told, each party is trying to get the weakest candidate to get the nomination. I think the Democrats, for example, wanted Roy Moore because he was the weakest candidate in, what was it, Alabama or Georgia? But the point is that it's the
Arkansas?
most.
Was it Arkansas?
Yeah, it was down south.
Alabama.
In every single election, the weakest candidate of the opposing side is helped by the opposing side.
All right,
it's so common that it would be impossible for it not to be happening.
All right, so I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So Nixon knows he's going to win in a landslide. Why is part of Watergate that they break into the DNC? Why do they need to do that if he's going to win in the landslide that he did win by? That seems just crazy. That's one thing I haven't understood about Watergate.
Well, there is a question of timing there. I don't remember whether the break-in was before McGovern got the nomination. But now this is something you'll never hear anywhere else. So I'm giving you a little scoop right here. But there is an explanation that has never been really considered, but it makes a bit of sense to me. Back then, people were very square, and there were a lot of hippy dippies and revolutionary people in the Democrat authority, in powerful positions in the Democrat Party, that were sort of saying we're going to march to Washington and take it over and impose a communist regime that's going to withdraw from Vietnam and bring socialism to America. There was a radical hippie movement back then that really shocked the conservatives in government. And one of the Watergate burglars, whose name was G. Gordon Liddy, said that he was ordered to break into the Watergate Hotel office of the head of the Democrat Party in order to find out if there was any collusion between the Soviet Union and the Democrat Party. Now, he could have been lying to cover his ass, but that's what he maintained into his old age. I believe he's dead, but that was his final explanation for why they did it. It's also possible, in fact, likely, that Nixon was looking for more dirty tricks, because he'd already attacked the campaigns of Muskie and Humphrey with dirty tricks.
He got Muskie. He got Muskie to cry.
He didn't get Muskie to cry.
How'd the crying thing happen? Muskie cried at some point.
Yeah, what happened was this. Muskie was the front runner of the Democrat Party.
Democratic.
And everybody thought he was going to defeat Nixon. So the Republicans were so dirty under Nixon that they released some sort of gossip that somehow demeaned Muskie's wife. And Muskie was responding to it in a speech, and he started to weep. And it turned out that Muskie, nobody knew this at the time, was an addict or a habitual user of a powerful drug called ibogaine, which might have made him cry easily. I believe one of the side effects was it makes you cry easily.
What was it, like a Valium or something?
I don't remember what it was, but it was a very powerful drug that can actually give you hallucinations. And so that's the real reason he cried. But
he was prompted to cry because the Republicans were effing with him.
Well, that's not all they did. They hired a guy named Donald Segretti to write letters to newspapers saying, I am a very proud Canadian, and I'm very angry with, because there were a lot of Canadians in New Hampshire, I'm very angry that Muskie has been calling French Canadians Canucks. And, of course, never even occurred to Muskie. But then the word got out that Muskie hated French Canadians. So it was just, Nixon was playing very, very dirty with the Democrats. So it's perfectly possible that the Watergate break-in was to find more dirt. But as I say, just to be fair, the actual burglar, G. Gordon Liddy, said it was because they were afraid of Democrat collusion with the Soviets, which personally I think they had a right to be afraid of.
All right, that's a good time to break again.